Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sir Jude, and today I will re-upload the reviewer for your upcoming master test on Monday. So apologies for the version of the video that I uploaded this morning because the second half of the video uh, froze without the PowerPoint presentation. But anyway, my mistake, and here I am redoing all my work again. So our the topics for second quarter cover a range from electricity and magnetism down to mirrors and lenses. So in this reviewer, which is part one, first half, no, goes way back when we discussed it first back in late September or early October. Okay, so let's start with charges. So the three types of subatomic particles are one blank, the neutral species, two blank, the negatively charged species, and three blank, the positively charged species. So an atom, all atoms contain the three subatomic particles. So if it's neutral or chargeless or no charge, we call them the neutrons. The negatively charged species are called electrons. Just like the yellow circles that I presented to you on the seesaw below, while the positively charged species are called protons, okay, which are designated with red circles. Now, for number four, what is the overall charge of each species below? So each species A, B, and C contain different numbers of protons and electrons. So there are no neutrons for A, B, and C. So let's start with letter A. So there are three protons and two electrons. Therefore, letter A is a positively charged species because there are more protons compared than compared to electrons. For letter B, we have three electrons and three protons. So therefore, the charge is neutral because the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. And for letter C, you have four protons and three electrons. So therefore, letter C is also positively charged, just like letter A, because there are more protons compared to electrons. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of the reviewer, charges and poles. So number five, how will you describe the orientation of the electric fields of each charge and the magnetic fields of each pole? So now that we know, especially for the charges, which is positive and negative, no, and what do they comprise of, it's time to know now the orientation of the electric and magnetic fields. So let's start with the negative charge. The negative charge has electric fields oriented toward the negative charge. Because if you look at the direction of the arrow, it's pointing towards the negative charge. For the bar magnet, where it contains a north pole and a south pole, for the north pole, you see that the arrow is moving away from it. So the magnetic field is oriented away from the north pole and towards the south pole. So no need to memorize this part, no, because this one is pretty straightforward and a giveaway. By contrast, for the positively charged species, the electric fields are oriented away from the charge, which is opposite to the ones that we discussed with the negatively charged species, or the negative charge rather. All right, so now that we know the orientation of the electric and magnetic fields, it's time to have a pair of charges and a pair of poles together. No? In number six, we're going to answer the question, will the pair of magnetic poles repel or attract? So there are two basic principles of magnetism. Number one is like poles repel. So for the pair of poles that will repel, those are north-north and south-south. So if you place two magnets together with the same poles oriented towards each other, then therefore they will repel. While for the second principle of magnetism is that unlike poles attract. So obviously this one on the bottom left, no, the north end of one magnet and one south end of another magnet, when you place them together, they will attract because the magnetic field of the North Pole, which is oriented away from it, will be attracted to the magnetic field of the South Pole, which is oriented towards it. That's why attraction will occur. All right. So let's move on to number 7. So same question, but this time we're dealing with the pair of charges. So will the pair of charges repel or attract? So there are also two basic principles of electricity. So number 1, like charges repel. So therefore, positive, positive, they will repel. While negative, negative, they will also repel. And then for the positive and negative, for unlike charges, they will obviously attract because they have different orientations of the electric field. For positive, it's moving away, while for negative, it's moving towards the charge. Therefore, they will attract. Right? Next, number 8. So wireless charging pads recharge electronic gadgets in short distances without the need for physical cables between the charger and the device. So at this point, we're now going to establish the relationship between electricity and magnetism because for the previous slide, they are two disconnected and separate and independent branches of physics. So now we're going to establish the relationship between electricity and magnetism. So we have a wireless charging pad where you don't need a wire in order to charge a certain gadget that's about to shut down or power off. No? So how does one charge a device to the charging pad? So if you have a tablet, no, whose battery life is about to be completely drained, all you have to do is just place the tablet on top of the charging pad. Okay, so why do you need to place the tablet on top of the charging pad? Because you have to establish magnetism between them. And once magnetism is established between the gadget and the charging pad, and therefore that's the time that the electrical charge in the charging pad will now charge the gadget. So what conclusion can you draw regarding the relationship between electricity and magnetism based on how wireless charging pads work? So because magnetism has to be established first before electricity flows from the charger to the gadget, and therefore magnetism induces electricity. Yeah. Magnetism induces electricity. Magnetism must come first and electricity is the consequence. And the scientist echoed by the mechanism of the wireless charging pad is none other than Michael Faraday. Just to clarify, no, Faraday did not invent wireless charging pads. It's been long dead, even before, no? So centuries before. So I'm just saying that the principle of magnetism powering electricity is devoted or conceptualized by Michael Faraday. Okay, so let's now move on to the next slide, which is um another topic that fuses electricity and magnetism together. So for number 9, electric fans contain electric motors that create airflow for cooling and ventilation. The blades, or in Tagalog, the LEC, are equipped with magnetic coils inside to facilitate rotation. So as you can see in the slide, you have the electric fan at the top right and the electric motor at the bottom right. So how does the electric motor of an electric fan activate? Usually electric fans, they have wires. So if you have a wire, all you have to do is just plug the wire into a power outlet. Then therefore, the power outlet will discharge the electric current, allowing the electric motor to rotate. And the magnetic coils inside the blade to activate rotation with the blades. So in that scenario, since you have to plug the wire to the power supply, therefore electricity must be established first for magnetism to occur. So this one is an antithesis of the ones that we did in the previous slide. So this time, electricity induces magnetism. And the pair of scientists that are echoed by the mechanism of the electric fan are there are two. So first, we have Hans Christian Ørsted. So according to him, a current carrying wire will produce electric and magnetic fields. So even though the wire is not actually the most prominent topic here and with the electric fans, no, because at the end of the day, the central topic in this slide is electricity inducing magnetism. But that won't work without the power of the wire. So the first scientist whom this slide is dedicated to is Hans Christian Ørsted. And the other one who actually conceptualized electricity inducing magnetism is none other than Andre Marie Ampere. So remember, no, Ampere, his surname Ampere is the unit for SI unit for current. That's why if you see electrical appliances, no, the current being generated by that gadget or that power supply is has a unit of ampere, which is represented by capital letter A. All right, so thanks to these three scientists, Ørsted, Ampere, and Faraday, no, they were able to connect electricity and magnetism together. So that's why we have magnetism as a branch of physics, and we have electromagnetic waves. There are still two other scientists. Now we have uh, James Clerk Maxwell, which is responsible for the equations of the electromagnetic waves, and Heinrich Hertz, which discovered radio waves using transmitters. But anyway, let's move on. Now that we establish electricity and magnetism and fuse them together to magnetism, then therefore it's time to tackle the electromagnetic spectrum. So number 10, exhaust the frequency, wavelength, and energy trends from the gamma ray to radio and cell phone. So the electromagnetic spectrum is composed of the following. I will merge power lines with radio and cell phones, then microwave, then infrared, visible, ultraviolet, X-ray, and then finally we have the gamma ray. So when we say frequency, it refers to the number of waves. So gamma ray has the most number of waves here, while for radio and cell phones, you only have probably a portion of one wave. So therefore, frequency from gamma to radio decreases. It's going down. Now, when it comes to wavelength, we will say wavelength, it refers to distance of one wave. So for gamma, you may have the most number of waves, but the length of one wave is too small, just like that. While for radio, the length of one wave, let's see, power lines, no? Since I decided to merge it with radio, no? That's how long a wave is for power lines as well as with radio and cell phone. So therefore, wavelength from gamma to radio and cell phone as well as power lines increases. Okay? And finally, energy. When we say energy, we're talking about radiation. And we know that out of all the components of the electromagnetic spectrum, gamma is the most dangerous radiation That's why it's being used to kill bacteria, pathogens, microorganisms with food radiation. And it's also the one being bombarded to patients when they suffer from fatal diseases such as cancer, um, and etc. But not all deadly diseases can be cured by gamma, no? And yes, even though gamma radiation can kill microorganisms and even attack cancer cells. Now, there's also a possibility that their intense radiation can also damage tissues, even organs of living organisms. That's why gamma is the most dangerous. On the other hand, for radio and cell phones, no, no matter uh no matter how many times, no matter how prolonged your exposure to radio and cell phones, even if you sleep next to your cell phone, you will just end up fine because they're the safest radiation. So therefore, for energy, you have gamma that is most dangerous, and you have the radio that is the safest. So therefore, energy decreases. Now, now that we know the trends, it's time to establish the proportionality existing between a pair of electromagnetic wave properties. So let's start with frequency and energy. For frequency, um, frequency decreases while energy also decreases. So therefore, they have a direct proportional relationship. And finally, for frequency and wavelength, so frequency decreases while wavelength increases. So therefore, they have an indirect or inverse proportional relationship. And that's it. Let's talk about more about the electromagnetic spectrum. So number 12, specify the correct arrangement of the components of the visible spectrum. I just realized that second quarter is split into two parts, no? Electromagnetic spectrum as a wide array of spectrum from radio to gamma. And the second part will just be focused on visible light, specifically optics on mirrors and lenses. But anyway, the components of the visible spectrum, the Roy wave, are found at the visible spectrum, which is just situated between infrared and ultraviolet. So remember, red is found after infrared and violet is found before ultraviolet. Now, number 13, pinpoint the non-ionizing regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. When we say non-ionizing regions, these refer to radiation that cause vibrations and is basically harmless, while ionizing radiation cause disintegration of bonds of molecules, making it harmful. So, there are several non-ionizing regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. So I'll start with power lines, then radio and cell phones, microwave, then infrared, visible, and then lastly is ultraviolet. With ultraviolet, it is the only component of the electromagnetic spectrum that possesses both non-ionizing and ionizing abilities. So we'll classify ultraviolet as ionizing. And from there on down to gamma ray, they are now considered ionizing. So that is how the electromagnetic spectrum is split according to their radiation or ionization capabilities. Okay, next, number 9. Slide number 9. Okay, let's talk about the frequency range. Designate the component of the electromagnetic spectrum where the frequency values belong to. So, given the frequency range on the right, all you have to do is just pinpoint where the following frequency values belong. Also, have to find the range that they fit in. So let's start with sauna. For sauna, it's 3.45 times 10 to 13 hertz. The exponent is 13. and it belongs on the infrared region because in the infrared region, the range is 3 times 10 to 11 to 4 times 10 to 14 hertz. For hologram, you have 5.36 times 10 raised to positive 14 hertz. 14 is covers a wide range of the spectrum. So therefore, we have to rely on the coefficient 5.36. Therefore, it will fall onto the visible yellow component. Because of the visible yellow component, the coefficient ranges from 5.10 to 5.14. Radar guns. Frequency is 3.5 times 10 raised to positive 10 hertz. And that will fall onto the microwave region because the microwave region has a range of 3 times 10 to the 9 to 3 times 10 to 11. Insect trap. Insect trap has a frequency range of 8.11 times 10 raised to positive 14 hertz. Again, 14 is a very wide array, covers a wide array of the electromagnetic spectrum. So you have to rely on the coefficient 8.11 and that will fall onto the ultraviolet region because it must be greater because 8.11 is greater than 7.50. Next, food irradiation, 6.99 times 10 raised to positive 20 hertz. The exponent is 20, which is greater than 19, therefore falls on the gamma radiation. Baggage systems, the one that we see in LRT, MRTs, as well as in malls, no, to inspect out the contents of our bag without actually opening them. We have 7.25 times 10 raised to positive 18 hertz. That will fall the X-ray category because the frequency range is 3 times 10 to the 16 to 3 times 10 raised to 19. And last but definitely not the least, broadcasting station. This is the easiest, no? And naturally, it falls under the radio spectrum because its frequency, 2.45 times 10 raised to positive 9 hertz, is less than 3 times 10 raised to positive 9 hertz. Therefore, it's radio. And that's it. That's how you designate the component of the electromagnetic spectrum where the frequency values belong to. Now, final slide for part 1, formula manipulation. So remember when this is the only topic that we had in electromagnetism that had calculations, and we relied on two pyramids. The first pyramid centers on the relationship between the wavelength, lambda, and frequency f, with the help of a constant, which is the speed of light in vacuum, c, wherein the value is 3 times 10 raised to positive 8 meters per second. So the first pyramid establishes the numerical relationship between wavelength and frequency, while the second pyramid establishes the relationship between energy and frequency. So energy is symbolized by capital letter E, frequency by small letter f, and these two were connected together by the Planck's constant, which is approximately 6.63 times 10 raised to negative 34 joule a second. But instead of calculating actual values for this reviewer, we're just going to rearrange the formula to obtain the following quantities. Let's start with wavelength. So remember, in a pyramid which contains three variables, no? When you have two quantities situated next to each other, such as wavelength and frequency, all you have to do is multiply them. While when you have two quantities on top of one another, all you have to do is divide them, use division. And the same is also true for the second pyramid. So for wavelength, no, you have the speed of light in vacuum on top. Just a minute. It's represented by lambda. You have the speed of light in vacuum on top divided by the frequency at the bottom. Okay, so energy. Energy is found on the second pyramid. So energy is the variable at the top. So both the Planck constant, both the Planck's constant and the frequency are found at the bottom. And since they are situated next to each other, we have to use multiplication, H times F. Okay. Now for frequency, since we have two pyramids, and therefore we have two answers as well. So frequency in the first pyramid, you have the speed of light in vacuum on top and the wavelength or lambda below. So you have C divided by lambda. And on the second pyramid, you have the energy on top and the Planck's constant at the bottom. So you have E divided by H. And there you go. This is how we rearrange the formula to obtain the three quantities, wavelength, energy, and frequency. And this also marks the end of part one of the reviewer. So wait for part two, which will be uploaded later.